Thanks for tuning in. I'm kicking off a series on Texas Senate Bill 8, which would create an education savings account program here in Texas. If you have been following the content I've put out, you'll know I released a playlist of videos called What's the Deal with Vouchers? That just talks about the school voucher education savings account debate in general, and takes a look at some of the arguments for and against this type of policy. But that was all theory, and now we're getting down to brass tacks, and we have an actual piece of legislation on the table. So I wanted to put out a few videos on what that bill is looking like. So I'm recording this April 1st, 2023. There's been a lot of talk about education savings accounts over the past several months. It's been in the media. The governor's been touring the state talking about it. But now things are actually starting to happen in the legislature. There were several bills filed that would establish this type of program, but the kind of official chosen one is Senate Bill 8. It's got a low bill number, which signals that it's high priority. It was co-authored by the Senate Education Committee Chair, Senator Brandon Creighton. There's several big name co-signers. And this is the one that has advanced out of the Senate Education Committee and is now slated to go in front of the full Senate for a discussion and a vote. So things are moving along with this bill. It's a good time to stop and just kind of shore up our understanding of what's in it. So in this video, I'll just kind of frame it up and give some context. In the next video, I'll give a breakdown of how the proposed education savings account program is actually designed. And then in the third video, we'll talk about the projections for how much it will cost. So the first thing I need to note about Senate Bill 8 is that it actually covers several issues all at once. So in addition to creating an education savings account program, it also articulates a set of rights for parents whose children are in public schools, and it gives parents an additional avenue for appealing grievances with their local school district. It beefs up the requirements for school districts to provide parents access to instructional materials. It includes a broad prohibition against teaching on gender and sexual orientation across all grades. And it creates some additional rules about how districts handle student transfers across district boundaries. And there's probably some other stuff in there too, but those were the big ones that I've picked up on in my reading. It's pretty hefty. Now, I will say for the purpose of this video series, I'm just focusing on the education savings account component, but would encourage all of us to consider all of the issues and changes that are being proposed by this bill, because they're all pretty important. And I'll just say, I think I understand why they do it, but I always feel a little bit nervous about these really long, complex, multi-pronged bills that are trying to make a lot of changes at once, because I think it's easy to pass something because you like the headline, but miss some of what's in the fine print because there's so much happening. And so part of the reason I wanted to put out this set of videos was just to really drill down on what this bill is saying, because it's one thing to like the concept of education savings accounts in theory, but there are lots of different ways to design that kind of policy, and the devil is in the details. So we'll be looking pretty closely at that. One other observation I wanted to make is that Senate Bill 8 is advancing alongside Senate Bill 9, which does some really lovely things for public schools. So it's also authored by Senator Creighton. So for example, it calls for a one-time across-the-board pay raise for teachers, put some extra money in the pocket of retired teachers, make some other investments in the public school teaching workforce. All good things as far as I know. And that's encouraging. And I also want to acknowledge it's very clearly a strategic move, right? Because one of the biggest concerns that's consistently raised about education savings accounts and vouchers is that they're going to siphon funding away from public schools, and that they represent the erosion of support for our public education system. And so, the folks who are trying to advance Senate Bill 8 are very much aware of that. And so I see this pair of bills moving through at once as a way of saying, see, we're not trying to hurt public schools. We're giving them more funding, looking at all these things we're doing. So appreciate what they're doing with Senate Bill 9, but that shouldn't change the fact that we still need to look at Senate Bill 8 pretty closely to see whether that claim that public schools won't be hurt actually holds up when you look at the details. And either way, like even if the impact on public schools was going to be minimal, this Senate Bill 8 still represents a pretty significant chunk of new government spending. And I think all of us have an interest in making sure that anytime the government makes a new financial commitment like this, to ask whether it's really the highest and best use of our limited public resources. So that's why we're going to dive into a little bit more in the next couple of videos. I'll just mention really quickly, I'm going to be drawing on the text of the bill itself, the bill analysis, and the fiscal note. And I don't know that everybody like sits around and looks these things up for fun. So I did create another video just about how to look up a bill in the Texas legislature online system if you've never done it, if you want to like follow along at home. So feel free to check that one out as well. With that, I'll wrap this one up and we'll dive in.